Children. They occupy a special place in our hearts, and we would do anything for them. They are innocent beings, and so we protect them, care for them, provide for them, and make sure we are there whenever they need us. Although sometimes they get on our nerves, we would still do anything to see them happy. But unfortunately, there are evil people around who see their innocence as a green light to harm them. In the past, we've heard stories about trusted friends, neighbors, and even family members hurting children, and we often wish the worst on those perpetrators. Oftentimes, we wish for the death penalty or even the life in prison sentence, but for one mother, those weren't enough. Today's story is the case of Marianne Bachmeier, the woman who took matters into her own hands. Born on the 3rd of June 1950, in Sarstedt, Germany, Marianne Bachmeier's life wasn't a bed of roses. She was the child of parents who had escaped from East Prussia to Germany, and her childhood was not filled with all those activities children looked forward to. Her father came from a military background and had served his time in the Waffen-SS, which was the military branch of the Nazi SS, and this was evident in the way he handled matters in the household. Marianne grew up in a very strict household with staunchly religious parents and an alcoholic father who became aggressive when drunk. He would often beat up his wife and daughter whenever he was in a foul mood. Marianne had always been a free-spirited child, and as she grew up, it became evident in her beliefs and attitudes. Things never got better in the family, and there were arguments and daily fights between members of the family. Her father soon left the home, and it was just Marianne and her mother for a while before her mom remarried. Marianne was seen as being difficult, and her stepfather was a tyrant who would always beat and humiliate her. Her mother blamed her for all the conflict and kicked her out of the home. She became homeless and did whatever she had to do to survive. At age 16, Marianne found out she was pregnant. She wasn't ready to be a mom, and so she gave her baby up for adoption. Things continued to go downhill for Marianne. She could only stay at friends' houses for a few days and would often find herself homeless in between. She found solace in her high school boyfriend, and at age 18, she fell pregnant again. This time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to keep the baby or not. Shortly before she gave birth, she was sexually assaulted at a disco. She was traumatized and couldn't deal with her emotions. Her boyfriend at the time also decided he was no longer interested in continuing the relationship because she was now a victim. Keep in mind that this was in the 60s and people suffered the stigma of being victims. Seeing she wasn't in the right state of mind, Marianne made the difficult decision to give her second child up for adoption. She went ahead to finish high school and realized she couldn't couch hop for the rest of her life, and so, she immediately started looking for a job. She got a job as a waitress and found that she loved the lifestyle of late nights and sleep-ins, and decided since it paid just enough to make ends meet, she was cool with it. In 1972, she was working at a bar called Tip Asa, in Lübeck's Old Town, when she began an on-again off-again relationship with the bar's manager, Christian Berthold. At the age of 22, she was pregnant for a third time. But this time was different. She wanted to keep the baby as she was older and felt she was in a better position to take care of a child. In the years since she had given up her two other daughters, she had felt so guilty and empty. She simply could not face losing another one. Christian was not ready to commit to a serious relationship, and Marianne decided to raise her child by herself. Marianne gave birth to her third daughter, and, on November 14, 1972, she immediately fell in love with her daughter and vowed to be there for her the way she wished her mom had been. She tried her best to be present in Anna's life, and they were known as a mother and daughter duo. But all these didn't last. Marianne soon began to struggle with the life of being a single mother. Although living in the loft above the bar, they still needed more money. This prompted Marianne to take up more shifts at the bar, and it was reported that she was never ready to leave after her shift ended. She took time to unwind by drinking with friends at the bar. Little Anna often slept on benches at the bar, while her mom partied and drank the nights away. Patrons of Tip Asa became Anna's extended family. There were no rules, anything was okay, and night became day as her mother worked and socialized in the night and slept during the day. While her mother was asleep, Anna played outside on the cobblestone streets of Lübeck's old town. She spoke to neighbors and played with their pets, and everyone knew her. The morning of the 5th of May 1980 was like any other day. Marianne was asleep in their apartment above Tip Asa, and Anna got ready for school. The mother-daughter duo had an argument the previous night and things were murky between them. Out of spite for her mother, Anna decided to skip school that day. She decided to walk over to a friend's house to see if she was there, but the friend had gone to school. So the 7-year-old entertained herself by playing on the streets and talking to people. This was nothing new to the neighbors, as Anna was often seen playing on the street. Later that afternoon, Marianne was home expecting her daughter, but Anna was a no-show. She went out looking for her, but she was nowhere to be found. She waited till nightfall, then went to police to report her daughter missing. By the next day, Anna had still not turned up. Marianne knew Anna was mad at her, so she thought she was hiding at a friend's house to make her mother worry. But none of Anna's friends knew where she was. No one had seen her the previous day either. That afternoon a woman walked into her local police station and told police that her fiancé, 35-year-old butcher, Klaus Gabrowski, had confessed to her about a heinous crime. According to the woman, Klaus had killed little Anna. He was a neighbor of the Bachmeiers, and he knew Anna because she often spoke to him and asked if she could play with his cat. When Anna returned from her friend's house on that fateful day, she crossed paths with Klaus on the street. As usual, she greeted him and asked if she could play with his cat. He agreed, and the two of them went upstairs, into his apartment. His fiancée lived with him, but she was not home at the time. Anna didn't make it out of that apartment. No one knows what exactly transpired in the apartment, but Klaus strangled her with a pair of his fiancée's stockings. When his fiancée returned home, he told her about what he had done. She left the apartment immediately and reported everything to police. While she was out, Klaus Gabrowski packed Anna's body into a cardboard box, loaded it onto his bicycle and took her to a location on the banks of the canal where he buried it in a shallow grave. When police arrived at his apartment, he was nowhere to be found, but had left a note for his fiancée, begging her not to turn her back on him, and also said he would wait for her at their spot. He was arrested at the said spot. Klaus Gabrowski had a troubled past. He had previous sexual offenses behind his name, starting in the early 1970s. His first known victim was a 6-year-old girl who managed to run away from him. He chased after her and caught up, grabbing her and putting his hands around her neck from behind. She screamed so loud that he had no choice but to let her go. He was charged with attempted murder and given probation. 2 years later, he was on the prowl again. In 1975 he was charged with the sexual abuse of 2 young girls. He was given a psychological evaluation and was sentenced to spend time in a psychological treatment facility in 1976. While there, he was given a choice. He could remain there for an extended period of time, or agree to be chemically castrated and released after. He chose the latter. 2 years after his release, Klaus Gabrowski visited a urologist and requested hormone treatment, that is, to reverse the castration. This treatment was approved by the court because he reported physical side effects. He also had a fiancée at his side and they wanted to start a family. To the court, it appeared as if the treatment was successful and that Klaus had turned his life around. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. During interrogation, Klaus Gabrowski told police that he never intended to molest Anna. He denied touching her at all. According to him, Anna seduced him and tried blackmailing him. He claimed Anna requested for money and said if he didn't give her the money, she would tell her mother he raped her. And not wanting to go back to prison, he tried stopping her but ended up killing her. He was willing to put the blame on the innocent little girl, which, to be honest, is disgusting. Police went to the site where he said he buried her and found the box. Her little body was hog-tied and carefully placed inside. The conclusion was that the killer took his time. When police informed Marianne about her daughter's murder, she understandably lost it. She blamed herself for fighting with Anna the day before she disappeared. In March 1981, Gabrowski's trial kicked off at the district court in Lübeck. Marianne Bachmeier made sure that she sat in the front row of the courtroom. She wanted to look at the monster who had taken her daughter from her. She often spoke out and even shouted, "Say something, you pig," on one occasion. When Marianne heard Klaus Gabrowski's testimony, she lost it. How could he try to shame the victim, an innocent little girl? Being a victim herself, she was infuriated. On Friday, the 6th of March 1981, Marianne Bachmeier walked into the courtroom with a .22 caliber Beretta hidden in her purse. She walked close to where Klaus Gabrowski sat and opened fire. She pulled the trigger 8 times, of which 7 hit her daughter's murderer in the back. He slumped over his desk and fell to the floor, dying before doctors arrived. Marianne was immediately apprehended and she didn't resist. The news shocked the entire country, dividing the population. Some were in support of her action, claiming they would have done the same if they were in her position. Other people felt she should have waited for justice to be served. To be honest, I understand her. I mean, this man had a past assaulting minors and he managed to escape every single time. There was no guarantee he would have paid for his crime this time. Marianne was released soon after her arrest but was later taken into custody on the 14th of August because authorities received information that convinced them she was a flight risk. While in custody awaiting trial, over the span of 15 months, she attempted to take her own life 5 times. On the 2nd of November 1982, she was charged with murder because she had gone to the courtroom with her firearm in a premeditated plan to kill her daughter's murderer. 4 months after she was charged, on the 2nd of March 1983, her trial began. The trial lasted 25 days. In the end, the murder charges against her were dropped. Instead, she was convicted of manslaughter and unlawful possession of a firearm and sentenced to 6 years in prison. The verdict fanned the flames of the discussions people were having at the time. To some, it was a harsh punishment, others thought it was fair, and some others felt she was let off too easy. She was released in June 1985 after serving 3 years. Marianne sold her life story to the German magazine Stern for 250,000 Deutsche Marks. She used the money to pay off debt she owed for legal fees. In the late 1980s, Marianne got married and moved to Nigeria with her husband, who taught German language at a German camp. They divorced in 1990 and Marianne decided to move to Palermo, Sicily, where she worked as a caregiver at hospice. She said that she did not want to return to Lübeck, because there she would only ever be known as Anna's mother. When she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, she returned to Germany. She passed away on the 17th of September 1996 in Lübeck at the age of 46, and despite her wish to be buried in Palermo, she was laid to rest in the same grave as her daughter, Anna, forever memorializing her as Anna's mother. What are your thoughts on this story? Do you think she did the right thing? Leave a comment down below, like, share, and please, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.